Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Mindset to Learn podcast. It's a podcast about fostering a growth mindset to inspire commitment to continuous learning and personal growth. I'm Joanie Musser, a learning and development professional who is passionate about helping motivate others to see their full potential. And I'm the host of the show. With me during season 2 is my co-host, JoJo AI. She's been a huge help by introducing our guests to the show this season. Hey, take it away, JoJo AI.
Ahoy, listeners! Picture yourself cruising on the open seas, surrounded by breathtaking views and endless adventure. Now imagine blending this excitement with cutting-edge e-learning. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Charlotte, a dynamic L&D practitioner in the cruise industry, where she creates innovative e-learning solutions for cruise line crew. As an instructional designer, she leverages AI tools to craft engaging and impactful learning experiences. Plus, she's a YouTube creator. Her content includes practical tips on creating engaging e-learning experiences using tools like ChatGPT, Canva, and Vyond. Charlotte's videos are packed with insights on AI-driven techniques for enhancing learning, making her channel a valuable resource for anyone interested in the intersection of AI and education.
Hey, Charlotte. Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I am too. I've been following you on your YouTube channel. So when I saw that you've been talking about AI, I was like, I have to interview her. So,
yeah,
Charlotte,
I'm glad that you asked me as well. I'm really excited because, obviously you create great podcasts as well, so I'm happy to be a guest.
Thank you. Okay, Charlotte, start by telling our listeners a bit about yourself, your background, and how you transition really from digital media to instructional design.
Yeah, well, obviously on my YouTube, it kind of happened from nowhere. It allows me to obviously express what I love doing, obviously e-learning and instructional design, but my career didn't start like that, as you said. So my career started with a strong passion of kind of digital media. I studied broadcast journalism and did a lot of experience in TV, radio and stuff like that. And I just really wanted to test the waters to see what I enjoy doing. Because, you want, as you start your career, you want to kind of experience as much as you can, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I obviously studied and then realized, okay, what do I enjoy doing from all of this that I've been doing for a few years? And I really like the fact about being kind of behind the camera and editing and creating engaging content like video edits, for example.
Yeah.
I just love that aspect. So I decided, okay, I have this passion and I have another passion. So the other passion was, besides the digital content creation, was travel. So I went into the cruise industry for many, many years, which is great because obviously it allowed me to see the world at the same time and enjoy what I'm doing. So on board, I did various roles in digital media, from editing to photography to apps as well, using MS systems and stuff like that. So yeah, it kind of all developed. And along the way, I started to train people, and this is how it all kind of developed. I started to enjoy the process of, okay, I need to kind of do a training on how to use Premiere Pro. And you're like, okay, how do I do this in a way that's going to kind of help them, because it's complex, with Premiere or Final Cut Pro.
Oh, I know.
If they've not used it. So I started to create videos and loads of content. And I was like, I really enjoy this. So then when it came to the end of the journey, pandemic happened actually just a few months before I left ships. Not by choice, it just happened. So I came back to land, we call it.
Yeah.
When you come off cruise ships, you say land. And then I went into teaching because I thought, okay, let's try this, because I really enjoy the aspect that I've not really been doing much of. I did kind of a bit of training on it, teaching English for a foreign language, certifications. And then I went down that route, teaching young kids, which I really enjoyed. But I think it's good to be on the other side. Instead of creating the content, actually, I'm there and then with the student, interacting with them and, working out what's going to work for them, their learning styles. So that really helped me from that aspect.
Yeah.
But then I kind of was like, okay, I've been doing this for a while and I really enjoy it, but I'm doing digital content for the students, but I want to do a bit more. So then that's when I went into e-learning and digital content. So then I started to use Articulate 360, which is what I'm using now. I went into the medical field, first of all, creating e-learning content, which was great. Obviously, completely different industry to what I've done, but it's really good like experience because it really did test me as well, like being able to like work with the SMEs and create content in the medical field. But now where I currently am, I'm working back in the cruise industry, but creating e-learning content still, but for crew members on board. So yeah, I'm happy that I found this. It took me a while to get there, but I'm just glad that kind of the pandemic came and realized e-learning was kind of coming up more, and it came up like on job descriptions and jobs. I'm just glad that this like role came into my life and I'm happy I'm here kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, I think it's a great background. Everything that you've gone through up to this point has led you to where you are now. It's
exactly.
Just this progression that you've taken, and you've discovered not only your love for learning, but your love for teaching and helping others.
Exactly,
so that's pretty fantastic. Hey, listeners, little side note. Charlotte works for the same company that my husband works for.
So random.
So random. I was like, what? Anyway, that's all we're going to say about that. So I usually ask a lot of the guests on the show, like, because it's the Mindset to Learn podcast, I'm always thinking about like, what kind of puts you in the mindset to learn, or do you have any quirky habits, or maybe just something that you do to get you inspired to start doing work or to learn something new? Do you have anything like that?
I was going to say I've got podcasts as well, but what I would say first of all is, I mean, as personal development, I'm more of a podcast person than a reading person. I prefer to listen. Auditory learner here as well, visual. So first of all, I was going to say a quirky habit. As I said, I'm a visual learner. So if I'm learning myself, obviously I am considering this as well when I'm creating the e-learning content. But for me, I'm like, okay, I'm this type of learner, but what type of learner is this person? You know how it is when you're processing the information. So for me, I like to visually see everything. So I'm a bit excessive. In fact, I've tried to calm it down a little bit. For example, excessive, I like post-it notes and things like that. When I'm learning something, I know recently, I'm learning a language, which is extra alongside my work. And I got to the point it's too much. Now I don't have as many, where you go to the point where you have post-it notes, not just in the living room, but the bathroom and everywhere else. But to the point it's too much. Because I'm a visual learner, I like things like that. And the more you see things, I believe, the more that it processes into your brain better. So it does help, but I think it's a bit too much because you don't want people come around why is this in the bathroom? Do you know what I mean? Weird things like that. This is just a bit too much. Yeah. So that's a weird thing from my end. And as far as podcasts, I like a lot of mindset development podcasts. So that, when you're going for a walk or when you've got long flights, download loads of podcasts and you feel really refreshed when you get off the flight. I'm just so refreshed from all of this amazing energy. Do you know what I mean? That really helps me set my day up, even in the morning. Obviously, flights is different depending on the flight. So I think, for example, one podcast I really like is The Diary of CEO. He does a mix of mindset as well as interviewing people within business and industry. I like the mix. But again, if I really want to go down the route of manifestation, I didn't really know much about manifestation, but I like to listen to these podcasts. And this Mindset Babe I listen to a lot in that aspect. And there's another one I listen to called Power of Letting Go. Really good for releasing, kind of letting go thoughts. So these are a lot of personal development and mindset I heavily focus on because I think it's a really good way for me to kind of grow as a person. But yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, that was perfect. Of course, I love that you brought up podcasts. Actually, that's how I not really found instructional design, but once I discovered instructional design, I went and looked for every podcast I could find on the topic. And while I was walking or driving, kind of like flying, I would listen to these podcasts. The only problem with that is because I wasn't sitting somewhere stationary, I'd hear all these ideas and the terms and things I could be doing and programs that I should be learning. And I had nowhere to write it down.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop what I was doing.
It is like, oh, wait, there's a tip. Quick, take note.
So then I would like run back to the office and I would be like, okay, what podcast did I hear that on? And let me see if there's a transcript, or let me go through it really quick and see what's in the show notes. So anyway, I always encourage everybody to look at show notes as well, because any content that we talk about, the podcast that Charlotte just mentioned, they're going to be in the show notes. So if you want to check them out yourself, you can. Yeah. Excellent. I'm so excited that you shared all that with us. I feel like I have a little bit more connection with you now too.
Yeah, I mean, I love podcasts. I love YouTube as well, obviously, because I'm on it. But I love the variety of like listening when you have a certain thing, like walking, like you said. You can't be watching YouTube on your phone. So there's different way, like depends what you're doing, like you said. Yeah.
And I think I'm kind of visual too. It was interesting you were talking about Premiere Pro earlier. When I learned Premiere Pro, I had multiple monitors set up, because I would watch the video tutorials on one monitor and I would be logged in on the other one doing the actual activity. So visual, listening, and then application at the same time. Because I feel like with that, you have to do it. You can't just watch it or listen to it. So
yeah, it is like that. It's like you need to actively especially with softwares. You can obviously engage to a certain level, but you need to take action in some way. So yeah, because that's what I've done a lot of, like teaching others on, and obviously I use them a lot myself. That's probably what I use most out of anything else, softwares, because I went from Final Cut Pro to Premiere Pro, and then like you go to extensively like with After Effects with 3D. Then I moved to more like Vyond, which was more simplified but great obviously for e-learning creation. So there's all these different softwares you can use, and it's like, getting hands-on. But when you do one, the rest becomes easier. It's just the first one. So it's about getting the right learning method, like you said. Yeah.
And so that kind of like goes into, we were talking about you're learning all these different programs, but because your background includes media and teaching English even as a second language, how have those experiences influenced your approach to creating engaging learning?
I think having both aspects, the teaching and the digital media, they go hand in hand with instructional design and e-learning creation, because the thing is, if you have one of them, you may be lacking in the other. So I feel like when this job title came up, I just didn't know about it. That's what's so shocking to me, that when you read the description, you're like, wait, you need this, you need that. So, you just don't know job roles out there, like you said, and it just happened. So, for example, when I was teaching the students, I was teaching from the age of 2 to 11, then it went to adults. And, 2-year-olds, they know few words, and you need to consider like props, music, other materials that are going to really help them actually remember what's happened, and it does challenge you as a teacher, because, one thing that might work for one student might not work for another. Right. And that's what you're also implementing in instructional design, considering all elements and multimedia elements. Obviously, it's great we've got the materials there, SME input, but then we need to consider everything else, scenario-based situation, even considering gamification. So all of these are considered coming from having the multimedia background, as well as the teaching elements, thinking about what methods are actually going to work. So I think they really help hand in hand, and I'm just obviously glad that I'm able to make an impact in that way within my role now. I think that those two elements just hand in hand have really helped me, and as I said, the challenges along the way have been good, because now it's brought me to where I am. I'm able to grow, as an individual as well. Yeah.
So with your digital media background, are there any specific skills that you were using before you got into instructional design that you're now using in instructional design, like that transferred just perfectly?
Yeah, it depends on the role, but I've been using either Final Cut Pro, Premiere Pro, and then Photoshop. So for example, I'd need to use Photoshop to design elements to then implement into the e-learning. All the time within e-learning, heavily focused on making lots of video content. So using Final Cut Pro, using Premiere, everyone has different softwares, that's why I'm listing them all.
Camtasia, there's all different ones you can use.
So for example, when I'm creating like interactive elements, even 3D as well, like medical field, 3D is really good, for example. Interacting with a 3D element, so I'm using that like with After Effects. So if I didn't have that media background, obviously when you're trying to incorporate 3D and things like that, it's not easy to, maybe someone's just really smart, but it's not easy like for me to pick up that quick. So that really helped me to be able to just think what multimedia can I use that's going to really make this specific topic, effective? And that's what it's all about when it comes to the multimedia background. So figuring out what software is going to work, whether it's 3D, 2D, or still, or, interaction on there, video content, etc. Yeah. And audio as well.
So is the e-learning that you were developing for the medical field similar to what you're doing for the travel industry? How is it different?
I would say analysis stage is probably the biggest difference, because we're working with a lot of the content with the SMEs that are in that medical field. And when you're working in the medical field, it's a lot of compliant, like legal medical data that you need to get correct. So working with the SMEs in the analysis stage and really understanding the topic yourself. Like if it's something that I personally don't know much about, then I have to do a lot of research myself, to be able to create the e-learning. I need to understand the topic. So for me, when I'm implementing that into the e-learning materials, it would be very different to travel. Like travel's more visual storytelling, I would say, whereas with the medical field, it's more facts, statistics, thinking about graphs in a different element within the e-learning. So you can see the big difference between factual data. Of course, there's still factual data and regulations within obviously the travel industry in general, cruise industry, but obviously not to the length of medical, where it's a very strong topic and you need to work from factual data throughout all the learning content,
I think it is like the difference between life and death, or enjoyment and, a bad vacation, or totally different.
Pretty much, you couldn't have said it better. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's fabulous, though. I think I would enjoy the travel industry as well. Maybe one day.
Yeah.
Well, since the podcast season is about using AI within our field, I know I use ChatGPT, I use Canva, I use ChatGPT kind of as like that guide on the side, if you think about it that way. I just ask it questions. It doesn't necessarily do everything for me, but it does help me with outlining things, coming up with some initial ideas that then I can elaborate on, stuff like that. And I know you talk about several of the AI tools on your YouTube channel. That's how I found you. That's why I was like, hey, you got to come on the podcast with me. I'm hoping that you'll share some of the specific examples here with the listeners. What is it that you're using to create those engaging learning experiences? Which AI?
So I'll start with ChatGPT, like as you've touched upon it. As you said, it's great for when you're coming up with a new idea, being able to elaborate on that. Obviously not solely relying on that. I mean, initial stages, it's great when you're like, okay, I have this, I've got a mind block. Okay, what can I do with this? Really handy for that. And obviously, ChatGPT is available 24/7, so you can't really go to your colleague and, you know what I mean, in that sense. Yeah. Another one besides, let's call it scripting ideas or developing new ideas, is like resources, for example, materials that like a student can go alongside the e-learning. ChatGPT is really handy for that, because you can obviously research yourself as well, but they can give you a guidance and then you can go and research it. So it's really about giving you those initial stages and then doing extra research myself. I do that a lot, like within ChatGPT, and it's just really handy. And then I go ahead and then I can start researching more in depth myself. And obviously with e-learning, I think for that initial aspect, especially I think with ChatGPT, as you said, the challenges we have is it might not be accurate. So that's why we need to work with SMEs to get, reliable data. So it's all about combining a mix of using it and then getting accurate data from the people that know more about it than anyone else. But, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we need that human aspect.
Yeah. And then as far as other tools, Canva you mentioned. Canva I think it's very user-friendly for like anyone. I really like that. And as you said, you use it yourself, don't you? I use it, like, for example, for like workbooks and still images, thumbnails, obviously, for my YouTube. And so within my work and outside of work in general, basically. And I really like Vyond because it's the animation. So it's controversial with Vyond because some people love it and some people don't. I don't know if you've heard. It's like a thing where, it's like people either love it or they don't, like Marmite. That's what I think.
I need to learn to love it. I am not a fan of animation, and that's just some kind of personal bias I've had for years. I don't know what it is. I watch some cartoons, but when it comes to training or learning, I used to work with ed tech companies, and I think my bias comes from a lot of them that use some of the animated characters usually are targeting a younger audience. And I was working with older students and then with adults. And I just felt like the animations distracted from the learning. But that's my own personal bias.
Yeah,
I need someone to convince me otherwise, and I will use it more. I personally haven't found that enjoyment yet with it.
Yeah. It's like comparing Synthesia, you know, the AI avatar I've discussed on my channel, and then Vyond. It's like deciding between, okay, so for example, let's say you want like a talking head, you know, where you have the avatar in Synthesia, they've made it more emotional, where she's talking to you, like it's basically like a mentor.
Yeah.
Or you can have like a talking, like on Vyond, you can have a character. So for me personally, I think it depends on the project. And I'm experimenting. I'm like, okay, but there are topics that I found really useful in Vyond. And the great thing on Vyond I like is that they have, for example, when you go and edit something or a video, you have to get the stock footage. And let's say you're doing a heavy topic like compliance, and you need to be considerate about what footage to use that may come across like not regulated or anything like that. The thing is with Vyond, they have a lot of scenes you can use where it becomes softer, I would call it, where you can actually make it come across not so heavy, whereas if you had to film the footage, it wouldn't come across the same way. I feel like Vyond can make it lighter and also easier to understand a very complex topic. I've done training myself, like from a user going on to learning, it's made by Vyond. I was like, oh, this has actually really helped me learn in a great way, and I really understand the topic. Okay. So when you create it yourself, it's different to them being a user, obviously. But from the first time I actually experienced it was from a learner perspective. So I enjoyed that. So when you're designing it, you just think that obviously if you're enjoying it and other people, you know, being able to create the content to make it also have the same response that I've had. But again, I think it depends on the topic, because for this specific project, it's not going to work. But for this specific, it's great because I can use the scenes. I can make it easier for the learner to not feel overwhelmed with specific details. And I think that's what it comes down to when it's making a decision. Okay, will Vyond work for this project? But actually, using a real person or a real avatar, or if we're comparing it to Synthesia, will work in this aspect. Maybe they want to have more of a corporate approach, do you know what I mean, in that aspect where we want someone speaking. So I think it draws down to the project itself, from my experience anyway, with the design aspect.
Yeah, I agree with you. That would be something that you do have to consider. And what is the goal of that project as well? Like you said, if it's something that's kind of a little bit harder material to convey emotionally, empathetically, then it's probably better to have something that will help soften that up a little bit to get the message across, but not infringe on anybody's emotional feelings. Yeah. Good idea. So tell me about Quizbot and Prepai. Do you use those for assessments?
So with Quizbot Prepai, I will create a lot of scenarios and quizzes because I feel it's really important to use them. So I actually sometimes use ChatGPT for ideas about questions, and then Articulate 360 as well I use to create the quizzes. So I've used Quizbot to help me with like ideas about how I could design it. So I've experimented. I use Articulate 360 to create them. The thing is, it speeds the process up when you use Quizbot and Prepai. I'm like, I don't even need to bother. So before I've been using Articulate, but it makes it even easier to use them. So if I really want to tailor something, I'll use Articulate. But if I want something that's like ready-made, I'll go to the AI one. So I'm constantly with this battle, like, does this need to be tailored more? Or am I happy with this? So it's constant battle between them, I think, when it comes to AI. Like, for example, with Vyond, you can generate videos instantly within 5 seconds. I've made a video about it. And you're like, wow, you have an idea, generates a video in 5 seconds. And that's great because it gives you the idea, but then you can go into it and edit. So I think, you know, we were discussing earlier about giving you the idea and speeding up the process, but then implementing more into maybe you're not happy with exactly how it's tailored. Do you know what I mean?
That makes me think of Yolanda Larner's episode that I just recorded before us. And she was talking about the same thing. She likes to use the AI to help her put together like outlines or even storyboards. it enables her then to save all that time doing that creation or putting it together. And then all she has to do is go in and fine tune it, edit what needs to be edited, change a few things here or there. Maybe she doesn't like where the picture is or what the instructions are. But she has that ability to go in and make all those simple adjustments, and she didn't have to spend all the time building it herself. So I think that's kind of the parallel to what you're saying there.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, that's what it's all about. Like, especially with Vyond, or like you said on ChatGPT, it comes up with an initial idea and you're like, of course, this would have taken me hours, days. It's making you more productive and getting more done in a short space of time as well. And then I go in, I'm like, okay, I still need to adjust this, like the voiceover's not right, but it's giving you that initial stage, which saves you a lot of time. And that's what it's all about, I think, with AI. It's, when like some people are saying it's taking away our job, no, it's just making us more productive so we can get more done. And that's the power of it, you know what I mean? The thing is, with some of the AI tools, I always try and experiment as many as I can. I really like to test the waters. I'm like, oh, is this tool going to work for me? Actually, I've tried it, it's not for me. Do you know what I mean? So I'm like, every time I see tools pop up on YouTube everywhere, and sometimes you try it and you think, actually, it's not what I thought. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. I know there's some other programs out there that will give you some great ideas for slides and stuff like that if you're having trouble coming up with
there is
ideas.
Actually, my video coming up is about an AI presentation creator as well, which I found really effective because I've tested a lot as well. So that's something I'm talking about in my next video anyway, about an AI where it creates the presentation. And I've tried a few and I'm like, it didn't really work the way I wanted it to. But this one I was happy with, so I'm sharing it. So yeah, like you said, it's like testing it and you're like,
And is this going to take too much of my time? Or what's the learning curve on it? Yeah. And is there something that's out there that can speed it up for me and I don't have to worry about this tool? So it's always finding that balance between what you need, the time it's going to take to learn a new tool, and then, hey, I just got to get this project done. At least that's how I look at it. So I know you also have done some videos and you've talked about cognitive load. And for most of us in instructional design, we're developing these learning solutions. We really want to reduce that cognitive load on our learners because otherwise their attention span isn't long enough, or they're taking in too much text. I think that's the problem that I see a lot of times at conferences when the presenters don't have a background in instructional design. It's like they coined the term death by PowerPoint, where there's just so much going on that the learner or the viewer just doesn't know where to focus. So how do AI systems reduce cognitive load when processing simple tasks?
Well, I think as you breaking down into manageable pieces is what it's all about. Even ChatGPT has helped with that element because, for example, you think that maybe ChatGPT is going to come back to you with loads of paragraphs and like, whoa, I just want to ask one question. What are you talking about? Do you know what I mean? But then if you ask more specific or say, can you break it down? It makes a difference because when you're creating heavy text, I try to avoid heavy text at all aspects when I'm creating content and try and break it down as much as I can because it can be too overwhelming. And for example, we've moved more to video now. So bite-sized videos are great because, it's a visual element. It's not just text and pictures. We're moving more to video content, but then also I'm seeing a lot of, we're getting to the video content, which is amazing, but then we're missing other elements of e-learning. And I've seen, for example, I think 400 videos after each other. I'm thinking, wow, this for me is a lot, 400 videos to think of. So we've got the bite-size element, but then we're missing the rest. And obviously with ChatGPT and AI, they're constantly gathering more and more data. We're giving them more data, aren't we? That's the reality. So in order for them to understand us, it's getting them more research. So, this year it's been amazing with ChatGPT. They're understanding us more and more because they're putting more research into it. And that's what it's about with the cognitive psychology. It's about understanding how we process information, how we make decisions, even our emotional state, asking how we feel, to the point with therapists, chatbots, you're thinking, wow, can I really message and they understand my feelings? And obviously we're still working on it, they don't know each and every person's personality. They haven't gathered content from every person in the world, but definitely it's growing, and I'm excited to see what's going on all the time. And I like to test the waters myself with AI and see how personalized they're getting, because they are getting more personalized. And AI is about personalization, isn't it? Like when it comes to searching and like personalized pathways, for example, with e-learning and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, see, I think that also helps reduce cognitive load when we can give some personalized pathways for people.
Yeah.
The other part of it that I find, and I don't know if you're going to agree with this or not, but when I think about developing some of the e-learning that I'm doing and using AI, even with doing some videos, it can be a lot when you're like, oh, here's a course with a ton of videos. But I always think about it as, let me give you a visual with a little bit of context, so some text. Here's a video to help you understand it. But then for like a micro lesson or like a micro unit, then I want you to apply it. So that's where those learning scenarios come in, some kind of activity that you have the learner do so that now they're applying it. Because a lot of times our e-learning gives employees, gives learners that safe place to learn before they make those mistakes, customer-facing mistakes or something that could be even more critical in their job. Whereas if they make the mistake within the e-learning, they can learn from it and hopefully not replicate it in the real world.
Definitely. It's about that. Like, as you said, making the mistake and not feeling so like embarrassed, like you said, or whatever emotion about doing, for example, let's say it could be a language, or you're working in a shop or retail, and you have a conversation, and then you approach that in face to face. Whereas when you're within the learning, you get corrected, obviously, if you've got feedback on there, or scenario based situation where you're having that conversation and then you make a decision. Would I do this? Would I do that? And it's about implementing a lot of scenarios, like you said, and quizzes to actually challenge you, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So we can have the content there, we can have text, we can have video, we can have audio, but then I think the real part is the challenge. Even for me, every time I'm doing anything, I always look at it from a learner perspective. Would I learn from this? Do I need to be challenged? Yes, most likely, because then it's like I've learned it, but then I need to be tested. So I always look at it at that aspect, because that helps me create the content better when I always look at it from the other aspect. You know what I mean?
I just made a note. You probably saw me look down. I love that you call that assessment or the application piece a challenge. Yeah. I really think that it makes us have like a different viewpoint of an assessment. So it's not so scary, and it's not a pass or fail necessarily. It's just a challenge. Can you conquer that challenge? And if you can't, let's try it in a different way. Or maybe I need to go back and relearn the part that I wasn't successful on. I love that you refer to it as a challenge. It's going to be something that I start doing. I'm stealing that from you, by the way.
Oh, no, yes, fine. No, so I need to try, because as I said, I'm learning a language, so I'm always, I'm doing things after work, and I'm like, okay, this is always applying to my job somehow, because learning is everywhere, you know what I mean?
It is.
And I'm like, okay, so it's always like, I need to challenge me. So again, if I need a challenge because I've done this, but then I need to challenge myself, then likelihood the person that's doing my e-learning will need the same. So I always look at it like that. Obviously, everyone's got different methods, but as you said, I think it's good to test to see whether you need to go back, like you said, and actually, I need to go back to the beginning, which you can, because e-learning allows you to do that, and that's the power of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's what I love about it too. Even for me, when I have to do e-learning, it's like, oh no, how did I miss that element? I need to go back and relearn.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to empathize with my learners when I'm developing stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, we have talked about so much. I'm going to put a ton of resources in the show notes. But before we conclude our conversation here, do you have any final advice or anything that you want to share with the listeners?
Well, first with AI, I think we touched on it a lot. I would say test the waters, see what works for you, and what really try the tools, because I think I personally only know when I try them out, and just I guess stay informed. And obviously we want to be more productive in our jobs, don't we? And whatever we're doing, our businesses, whatever it may be. So I feel like AI complements whatever we're doing, whether it be creativity, ideas. I feel like we should get involved in some way or another, even if it's not fully, at least in some aspect in our roles. The other thing I would say is just go for it. As far as that aspect. And then as far as what I personally do, I like to stay up to date as well, like you said. So podcasts, I like in the e-learning industry, I have a lot of ebooks I like to read, or YouTube videos, or events as well. I went to the Learning Tech event. So I would say get involved in events, even AI events, if you want to learn more. Anywhere that you can go to learn about AI, I would try and just attend, because it will be impacted in anyone's role. It doesn't matter what anyone does at this point. There's some aspect, isn't there?
Yeah, pretty much. It's not going to replace what we're doing. It's going to enhance what we're going to do.
Enhance. Yeah, that's the one.
You know, and I feel like AI is our guide on the side, or our partner in ideating and helping us be more efficient in some areas that would take more time in our job. But it's not going to replace us, because I think the theme is we still need humans, right?
Yes, we do. We still need humans, but they help us, definitely. It's like what do you want to call it? Like, it's like your mini, do we call it a mini birdie? Do we call it a coach? Do we call it a friend? I don't know at this point. It's just a robot. Yeah, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, because it's not just generative AI. We've got the chat bots. We've got AI assistants.
Yes.
And they're there to help us. Charlotte, before we end, where can the listeners connect with you online?
So you can find me on my YouTube channel, Charlotte Jades World. I post weekly videos, really enjoy doing it, about, as you said, AI, stuff we've talked about, and I will continue posting, so you can find me there. I've also got an Instagram, but mainly my YouTube channel, you can find me, posting frequently. But yeah, that's where you can find me if you want to hear more.
Excellent. I'm going to put her information for the YouTube channel so you can subscribe in the show notes. And Charlotte, thank you so much for staying late in your day to talk with me. I know we're hours and hours apart, and I so appreciate your time and just everything that you had to share. It means the world to me, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanie. You're a pleasure I'm really glad that you invited me on the podcast.
Thank you.
You're doing really great stuff, and I'm excited to see more from you as well.
Aww. Charlotte shared some incredible insights